Night Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We are through the college preview season, and now we bring in our man Achilles Rain. And guess what? We got the NFL to go through. Now, we have to do this a little bit quicker than we usually do. We don't get the month lead up. We barely even get the true week lead up to our NFL preview. So we're going to break it down in three parts. We're going to preview the AFC teams, the NFC teams, and then do our player futures. And much like our college, we got a $25K pot to put our NFL future bets on. We're going to give you what we like in NFL player futures in both the player and team department. Achilles, after some health and safety protocols that delayed our NFL preview show and set us back a couple weeks, are you ready to dive in and get into previewing the NFL season?
Yeah, man, I'm ready. Listen, I'm feeling a lot better. I know you're feeling a lot better. So I'm just eager to get to talk some football. It feels like forever. So I'm ready. Let's get going.
Yeah, we get to talk some football, and then Thursday we get to make our picks. Well, I know we want this a little bit usually earlier, but stuff comes up. So we're going to run through it. We're still going to give you a good preview. So part one, we're going to get into the AFC, and we're going to start with the AFC East, and we're going to show you how we think the AFC East is going to finish. We both got Buffalo on top, and then we got Jets and Miami. You have Jets second. I have Miami second. You have Miami third. Jets third. I thought the most interesting thing about this is somehow we both have New England in last place in the AFC East. Let's start talking about Buffalo. Is there any chance any of these three teams you think can, injury barring? I think that just probably needs to be said outright. Anything injury, big players get hurt, things change. But health permitted, anywhere any of these teams can jump up and get Buffalo, or they're just a step above here.
Well, I mean, listen, they were a step above last season, even with as impressive as New England looked throughout the season, which a lot of people didn't expect. I still think that Buffalo was definitely the team to beat, at least in that division. And from their acquisitions during the offseason, whether it be through free agency or through the draft, they seem to have only gotten better. So I don't see how there's any chance, barring an injury, that any of these three other teams can contend with Buffalo. They just seem too poised to make a big run at a title.
Yeah, I can't really see. You maybe could convince me that Miami hits the ground running and could sneak up there. You look at Buffalo's schedule. I mean, it is a first-place schedule. They got a lot of difficult games in there, but, they also play, I think, the AFC East teams, and really, I don't think this of the AFC, I think, is easily the really weakest division, I think, overall. Maybe you could argue that the AFC South is, but I mean, Indianapolis and Tennessee have been two playoff teams consistently, and I don't think really since Tom Brady has left, you could say anybody other than Buffalo has been all that consistently good. Even New England playing well last year, I don't think either of us really thought they were all that good a team, and they proved out. So I do think Buffalo gets their wins, and I don't think they overcome. Why do you think the Jets are going to make a leap here into second place?
Interestingly enough, it's not so much about the Jets making that much of a leap. I think they got better this offseason.
Yeah.
I still don't think they're ready, but it's more of I've kind of been somewhat trusting with Miami over the last couple of years, and it seems like every time I put a little bit of trust in them, they seem to let me down. So it's more of I want to see what Tua's going to bring this year. I want to see what the new acquisitions with Tyreek Hill and all that are going to do this year. It's really hard for me to really trust this team because of how good they have been. They just can't seem to climb that hill, and that's really the big emphasis as to why I put them below the Jets.
Yeah, I think I'd have a little bit more faith Jets-wise if Wilson hadn't got hurt and we got a little bit of, some question marks coming in early into the season to see where he is. But I do think they've surrounded him with some decent talent. The defensive side of the ball should be pretty solid here, and I think they can make that leap. I just think Miami with the weapons they have definitely on the outside now with Waddle and Hill. They've brought in a handful of running backs. None I think we'd consider elite, but they're all sort of speedsters, and they fit, McDaniel's system, Shanahan's system, I think probably is what we should put it down as, a Shanahan-type zone blocking system. So I think those running backs could be successful. And Miami's defense has always been pretty solid the last handful of years. I look for that to continue. So I think they can probably hit that 10-win mark, maybe. The last 2 years they've won 9 games last year, 10 games the year before. It's been a little bit of unlucky that they haven't hit the playoffs, which I think if you ask teams, they probably wouldn't know that Miami's won 19 games. And if you look over the last 2 years, that's sort of in the top tier of AFC teams and wins. So I think they'll be in and around that mark again. It's just whether they can sneak in the playoffs with as deep as the AFC is. Let's get your thoughts on New England. Why do you think they're going to be just at the bottom? I mean, I have my reasons. They're probably the same as yours, but what do you think of New England here?
Listen, honestly, it all comes down to one. I think that we're going to see a bit of a regression at the quarterback position. Not to say that, he's not talented and he won't get better, but you see it, timeless times happening, especially with the second-year guys. They come out kind of in a flash and nobody really knows them. You start watching some tape, some defensive coordinators get tape on these guys, and they start noticing some of the little subtle things that they do wrong or some of their tells, and they seem to have a bit of a regression. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at it this year. I look at this New England team, and Lux is going to probably kill me when she hears this recording. But in my opinion, I feel like New England did the least to improve their team overall. Especially with the success they had last year, I would think that they would really kind of go all in and say, you know what, this is our future. Let's try and make something happen. Let's bring in some big name guys. And if anything, I feel like they brought in a lot of mid-tier guys. Nobody that's really going to impact what this team was progressing to last season. And even then, we saw a big drop off later on in the season as teams started kind of figuring out what the players were doing. So I kind of expect some regression this season, and just looking at the improvement of the other teams in that division, that's the reason why I have New England in fourth place.
Yeah, I was just I read something the other day. So if I told you who has the number 2 payroll of skill position guys, that is wide receivers and tight ends, who do you think it would be?
Oh gosh, New England is known for being a little stingy with the way they pay their players, but I would probably have to go to someone in the tight end position, maybe.
Well, New England has the second highest payroll of skill position guys, $72 million on wide receivers.
Yes,
and
I did read that.
If I told you to list the New England Patriots receivers and depth chart of tight ends, how far do you think you could go? And at what point do you think any of those guys are elite? Because none of them, I think, even remotely tick the elite box. So I read that, and you just don't think of it because they spent all that money the year before, but they don't have anywhere near, skill position guys, even like the Seahawks have Lockett and Metcalf. You look at the Chiefs room, they got rid of Tyreek Hill, but it's still Kelsey and Schuster and Valdez-Scantling and Hardman and the rookie Sky Moore. And you got Jonnu Smith, you got Nelson Aguilar. It's just a sort of mismatch of, okay, these are okay players, not, wow, that guy can really take the top off the field and hurt me.
And listen, and that's exactly, it goes back to what I just said. It's they went outside of the normal Patriot thing, and they seem to pay players. The problem is that the players that they paid, at least in my opinion, aren't guys that are going to come in and completely change the trajectory of this team. It seems like a lot of mid-tier guys, and I mean no disrespect by this, but maybe Bill sees something that we don't see. Maybe he just sees the system coming out ahead in this type of roster. But I just don't see enough talent there to warrant, especially that it's a lot of money they're spending. And I know I read that somewhere a while back, and it's in the back of my head. So when I was doing my rankings, it kind of was in the back. I just couldn't remember what it was. But yeah, they paid a lot of money to a lot of mid-tier guys, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you mix that with having spent that money on mid-tier guys. They had to release a handful of defensive guys, couldn't really get in that market. So that defense that really carried them, really the last 2 years is weaker, I think, this year. And then this weird situation with the coordinators where they don't have coordinators. It's going to be a team of people calling the offense and defense. And, granted, defense, I leave that alone. Bill pretty much would be calls the defense anyway. But offensively, I think that's really, really weird. You mentioned regression with Mac Jones. This team sits, I think they could beat a 6-win team, possibly if things go wrong. Now, early their schedule's really difficult, then it gets a little easier mid-season, but I think a lot of difficulty could be had if things start to spiral, especially if the Jets make a little bit of a leap, and Miami has owned them over the years, and Miami's better and Buffalo's better. So I think this could be a down year for the New England Patriots. I'm curious to see how this works out. All right, let's get into our futures here. I got a couple in this one. I got a handful of Bills ones, mostly like Super Bowl ones here because there's not a lot of value in Bills like win total and stuff. So I have Buffalo Bills to beat the San Francisco 49ers at 55 to 1. The Buffalo Bills to beat the Philadelphia Eagles at 100 to 1 in the Super Bowl. I have Buffalo Philadelphia to meet in the Super Bowl at 65 to 1. And Buffalo Indianapolis Colts 13 to 1 AFC Championship game. I really like that one. And then I think this one's probably my favorite one. Exact order of how the division's going to finish. Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots. 62.50 on that one, and it pays 13 to 1. I think that's a nice little thing because you slip those Jets above the Patriots there and see if you can hit that one. Patriots, I have win total under 8.5 wins at minus 105. I have 250 on that, and then a couple Dolphins ones. Long shot one, Dolphins number 1 seed. Maybe all these teams put their stuff together, and that's 19 to 1. Dolphins AFC East is plus 450. Dolphins over 8.5 wins, minus 135. The next one I really, really like, Dolphins alternate win total over 10.5, and that's getting you plus 230. They've been around 9-10 wins. I don't think it's a reach to say they could get to 11 wins and getting a nice little juice at plus 230. And this one I thought had pretty good value too. Dolphins, highest scoring team, 30 to 1. I think with Waddle and Hill, you might be able to sneak that in there because I think everybody thinks, Chiefs, Bills, blah, blah, blah are always the highest scoring team. But if you go back and look, it's always somebody a little weird. Last year, you know who the highest scoring team in the league was?
If I had to take a wild guess, I would probably say Minnesota.
It was the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, okay. I mean, they were up there for the first half of the season. I know that for sure. But yeah, a little surprising.
It's just always somebody weird. Now, consistently, Buffalo and Chiefs are always in the top 5, Chargers, but it's always somebody weird who also gets a bunch of defensive touchdowns. That's really what factors. The Cowboys got all those pick sixes early in the year, which count as points total. So just a one I like there. Dolphins highest scoring team, 30 to 1. What do you like futures wise here in the AFC East?
Listen, I've only got a couple. I went a little different route. I kind of followed the dynamite strategy here. Just went with $1,000 bets down the league. So I've got the AFC East forecast here, and I've just got 2 bets here, which is just the Bills to finish first and the Jets to finish second. And that gives you plus 1,100 value, which I thought was pretty good value, especially if you are of the mindset that, you're going to have that regression from the Patriots and the Dolphins situation with, Tua and them. Can he really step up with all these new weapons that they've added to him? So I thought that was pretty good here. I have a couple other ones. I didn't focus too much on, one division. I tried to kind of, sparse it out throughout the futures, prop bets, and different things. So, but yeah, I like some of the ones you made, and I'm probably gonna have to take a few of those myself.
All right, so let's move to really. Everyone says the West is really, really tough, but I think this North Division, could be really, really, difficult. Especially once Watson gets back. If Cleveland can sort of hold the line and stay in and around 500 by 11 games into the season, I mean, that's 4, I think, really, really good teams here. So You have Pittsburgh to finish first. I have Baltimore. I have Pittsburgh second. You have Cincinnati second. You have Baltimore third. I have Cincinnati third. We both have Cleveland last. But really in this division, I think basically you can interchange any of these three teams. It's do you think Cincinnati can build on what they did last year? You look at Baltimore, who were 8-2 up until the point when everybody started getting injured, including Lamar Jackson. So you look for a bounce back season there. And then Pittsburgh, I think, is the biggest wild card because what they've had at quarterback basically the last 3 years is barely a human being. And certainly not a human being who could throw the football forward anymore. Now you go into, Trubisky and Pickett. How much does that improve your team, and how much is the curve there? And I think the biggest question is, can we get improvement from the offensive line? It wasn't all Ben. It didn't help Ben that his offensive line wasn't any good, either. So you got an old man who can't throw the ball very well and a bad offensive line. Can they get that running game going to sort of protect, whoever's going to play quarterback, Trubisky or Pickett? I'm pretty sure Trubisky probably start the season, move into Pickett, maybe later on if things aren't going well. I think the defense will be fine. So how did you sort of come about how you thought the North would spin out this year?
Listen, I looked at it exactly as you mentioned it. I feel like these three teams, the ones we have in first, second, and third, are pretty much interchangeable based off just how things go. You look at Baltimore, they've been probably the best team in this division over the last couple of seasons. Their biggest issue has been, one, they had no weapons for Lamar Jackson, and two, health. They seem to get hurt all the time. It's always been their biggest downfall. You mentioned it last season. They were having a really good season until everybody started getting sick or hurt. And after that, it was pretty much the ghost of the Ravens. Even though they won a few games and they managed to stay in contention, they just couldn't close the door and finish finish this division off. You look at Pittsburgh, probably one of the best run organizations in football. You talk about consistency with coaching, consistency with their drive for excellence. Even when their defense doesn't have all the big names, they still seem to be able to do enough on the field to be considered one of the top defenses. And we saw it last season, even with Big Ben and him being pretty much a statue back there, if he wasn't already when he was younger. I think getting some new blood in that backfield is going to revitalize that offense, an offense that has some pretty good weapons when you look at it. And I think that even if somewhere down the line they end up making the change from Trubisky, I still think that this team is pretty much set for the long term. They're well run. They have a track of success that we can all point to and be like, this is why I trust this team. So that's pretty much my thinking with this. And Cincinnati, listen, they did a really good job last season. I think they got a lot further than people anticipated they would. But this offseason, they seem to have made so many drastic changes, spent so much money bringing new offensive linemen, all these things. And sometimes you wonder, did you change too much? We've seen it happen several times with teams that are very close to winning a championship. They change too much, and that team is no longer the same. And with the Browns situation, listen, I'm not the biggest fan of the trade with Houston. I've said my piece about that before, but I just think that that's too many games for them to be able to be relevant. I think that if it were, 4-6 games, maybe you have a shot. But I think this many games, it's just too much to make up, especially with such a tight division, with such competitive division. I think that's going to be their downfall, which is why I have no doubt, at least in my mind, that that's a fourth place team.
Yeah, I think mixed with that, I think also you throw in Jacoby Brissett as the backup quarterback. Early in his career, I thought he was a pretty solid backup quarterback, but if you watched him play in Miami last year, he was really, really bad. Miami's bad stretch sort of started when Tua got hurt in that second or third game of the season, and then Jacoby Brissett had to go in there and take over. And I just don't think he's really a very good quarterback. The only argument you could probably say for Cleveland is maybe that defense buckles down and they sit there and hand the ball off to Nick Chubb, 35 times a game, grind out and maybe sneak a few wins in there, and are, 4-6, 5-5, going into when Watson comes back. The problem with that is, the AFC is just so deep that you know they aren't going to win the division, and then you're basically probably playing for like maybe one open wild card spot. I think I tried to do my wild card spots for a handful of these team futures, and it's like 5 teams probably battling for one, maybe 2 spots. If you start putting teams you think are automatic into the playoffs. So I don't know if they can overcome that, but I will give them a shot if they can get to sort of 4-6, 5-5 with Cleveland. Now, also, we don't know what Deshaun Watson's going to look at. He hasn't played football for 2 years, so
I've been saying that since the trade happened.
I don't know if integration, throwing him right back into the tail end of a football season with these kind of teams and defenses is really going to be all that much. And Cincinnati, I think, is interesting because there are like 2 camps sitting with Cincinnati. There's a camp that sees that they've improved and gotten their team better. And, say what you want, they got to the Super Bowl last year. But I think if you play those playoffs, 10,000 times, that might be the one time that the route for Cincinnati sort of opened up with basically freakish stuff in every type game. You open with that Oakland game where they have the goal line stand on the 3-yard line. You move to that Tennessee game where Derrick Henry comes back and he's banged up and hurt, and Ryan Tannehill basically wins the game for you. And then in that Chiefs game, they're getting absolutely mauled in that first half. The weird goal line stand there, and then whatever the hell happened to the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in the second half. So, they did win. They did play well, but the camp's sort of like, was that a little flukish, and will they sort of stay around? Or they have so many elite talents, especially on the offensive side, that are still on rookie deals, which is what allowed them to sort of spend all that money on, higher level players along the line, improvement on the defense, which is what gives them, you'd probably say this year, next year, before, all 3 of those receivers, with the way receiver money is being thrown around, I'm not sure you can pay all 3 of those guys, $35 million. And then with the way quarterback money is going around, Lord knows what it is going to be for Joe Burrow when that rookie deal comes up. So it's just interesting, sort of the 2 camps. I sort of sit in the middle. I think they'll be better than they were last year, but I don't know if that necessarily will translate to like a return trip to the Super Bowl. I think they'll still be a very good team, but I don't know that means I'm them in for the Super Bowl overall. All right, let's get into our futures here for this division. I didn't have as many because, as we talked about, I didn't have a great feel for this division. I think there's so many good teams. I didn't want to take a stand. I got a couple on the Ravens. Ravens 49ers Super Bowl 95-1. Ravens Eagles Super Bowl 150-1. If the Ravens put it together, I think that's a pretty solid bet. And then Ravens and Eagles both win their division as a 2-team parlay, plus 550. I thought that was really, really valuable. I'd keep the Eagles in your mind because of team bets. There is a lot from my side on the Philadelphia Eagles. Cincinnati, I just had Cincinnati, Kansas City, Tampa Bay win their division 10-1. I thought that was really good value because I think Kansas City, Tampa Bay, at least favorites to win theirs. Cincinnati, pretty solid bet, to at least be in and around the top of their division. So 10-1 on that kind of value I thought was pretty good. And I had nothing for Cleveland or Pittsburgh because I don't know what to expect for those teams. Those are sort of watch and see how we get during the season. Anything for you in the AFC Central?
Well, honestly, I don't have too much for the AFC North. I do want to bring it up really quick before I forget. I have one more for the AFC East, which was the Dolphins to make a wild card spot at plus 260. I thought had decent value, especially if those guys can get things together. But I do have some player prop picks later on for the North.
All right. So let's move to the South. This is probably easily I don't know, them in the East probably battle for the weakest division, but I think everybody's really, really high on Indianapolis. Bringing in Matt Ryan, we both have them number one. We have a little bit of a difference there. Jacksonville, Tennessee, Jacksonville in our picks, and we both got Houston sort of bringing up the rear here. I'm curious what your thoughts on Indianapolis. Out of the Carson Wentz business into the Matt Ryan business. How much does this improve their team, and what do you think the Indianapolis Colts ceiling is this year?
I have the Colts finishing in first place in this division. And I know that this has been Tennessee's division pretty much back and forth with the Colts over the last couple of seasons, but I just feel that them going to a guy, an established, proven veteran like Matt Ryan, after the Carson Wentz, fiasco, I think it's only going to improve this team. This is definitely one of the teams that has one of the better defenses, not just in their division but in the league. And they've had pretty decent, production out of the weapons. They've got one of the best running attacks with Taylor, and I think bringing a veteran like Matt Ryan, a guy who's seen pretty much everything, he's been to the big game, he's seen all kinds of different defenses thrown at him. I think it's only going to improve this team, and they do have a small window because of all the different tryouts that they've had at the quarterback position, but I feel like this is probably their best shot at getting as far as they want to. It really is going to fall on health and whether they can keep up the same production they've had over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I'm really high on Indianapolis here. I think there's enough juice in Matt Ryan to sort of last another couple years. He's been solid in Atlanta, nothing like he was, in that mid part of his career, but I think he'll be good here in Indianapolis and, leaps and bounds and improvement from Carson Wentz and, Phillip Rivers, who was on the very, very back end. But even then, I thought Indianapolis was able to sort of even build around Phillip Rivers and his limitations. And I think Matt Ryan is a little bit more explosive still, got a little bit more juice left in that arm and legs than Phillip Rivers. Jonathan Taylor probably took the title of best running back in the league last year. So Indianapolis's defense has been solid, now for 3 or 4 years. I look for that to continue. I think the sort of swing team here is Tennessee. Tannehill comes back. They do this weird thing with the receivers where they don't pay A.J. Brown. I don't hate that. But then you're limiting what your outside explosiveness is. I get it, they bring in Robert Woods, but, he's an older receiver who's coming off a major, major injury. And, you bring in some rookies. And, say what you want out of, commie propaganda coming out of training camps about how great rookies are. Then we watch during the season and they end up with 20 catches and you're like, well, I thought he was dominating training camp, and a lot of people dominate training camp in shorts. It's different once you get out on the field. So, and the Derrick Henry question probably looms the largest over this. He was really, really good the first half of the season. Foot, breaks. He comes back in that playoff game, and he did not look right. Now, how much of that is him just sort of rushing his way back off a foot injury? How much of that is this is now a very old pickup with a lot of miles on it and now sort of bad feet? How are you looking at Tennessee's season this year? And then, the bad news over the weekend is now Landry tears his ACL out for the year. So you lose one of those pass rushers, which was a huge, huge part of Tennessee's defense, sort of making an improvement from the year before. So how do you sort of outlook Tennessee's season here?
Well, listen, you said it. They definitely had an improvement last year. The previous year, they had one of the worst defenses in the league. They gave up just about everything. And we expected at least a little bit of it that last season, and I felt like we didn't get as much as we thought. I thought they were much improved compared to the previous season. Now, obviously, it was a bit of an Achilles heel. They were exposed during the postseason, but as you mentioned, now they're losing guys to injury. They lost A.J. Brown on the offense. Derrick Henry, another year older, another year of wear and tear. Did he come back too early? Should he have even come back during that playoff game? I think I was one of the few people that said that I thought he should just sat that one out. The Titans were having success with their backup running backs, for the previous couple of games while he was out with injury. So I thought they rushed him, but I think there's just too many unknowns with this team. I know that they've been really good, over it feels like almost a decade now that they've been at least better than mediocre. It just seems like the wheels are starting to fall off the wagon, so to speak. And we're starting to kind of see all the little glitches in the system. And I hope that's not the case. I know that they brought in Robert Woods. I love Robert Woods as a former Ram, but I think he's more of a locker room guy because I don't think at his age, after that injury, you're bringing him in for production. I think you're bringing him in more for culture, for the type of culture that he brings to the wide receiver room. But you got young guys like Phillips, and they look really good in practice. But as you mentioned, this is practice. There's a reason why a lot of this doesn't translate into actual games. It's because it's easy to run in shorts, as they say. And I'm just not sold. I still think they're a good team. And if they can get most of their stuff together, I still think they can contend for this division. I just don't think that they're dominating the way we saw them dominating a couple years ago.
Yeah, I want to get in these bottom two teams. Jacksonville, who had the number one pick, went out in free agency and sort of went the New England Patriots model and spent on a lot of sort of middle tier guys, I'd say. But I don't want to hate on that method because that's an upgrade over a lot of what they had on the roster. I think Travis Etienne sort of coming back after, blowing out his ACL in his rookie year will improve them. And probably the biggest improvement is Urban Meyer will no longer be their head football coach. Say what you will about Doug Peterson, but he at least knows how to run an NFL locker room and sort of game plan for an NFL game here. I think Jacksonville's sort of stocking up pretty decent talent, especially on that defensive side of the ball. Where do you think their improvement will be, and how much of an improvement do you think Trevor Lawrence will make from his rookie year, which you could probably say was a little disappointing, but, looking at that situation, I don't know if there's probably a worse situation to go to other than maybe when we get into the Chicago Bears and whatever the hell is going to go on there. But do you look for improvement over Trevor Lawrence this year and maybe a little bit of an upgraded sort of Jags team this year?
Well, listen, you always look for improvement, regardless of whether you're a second-year quarterback or a 13-year quarterback. You're always looking to improve in this league, and it's no different with him. And I'm sure he's looking to make leaps and bounds over what he did last season. As you mentioned, I think the biggest plus for this team and for this organization is the fact that Urban Meyer's gone. He was definitely a cancer, so to speak, in that locker room, in that organization. It felt like
that might be insulting to cancer.
Listen, it felt like, he really held him down at times. I know that it was, I was looking back at some film, and Trevor Lawrence, there was a few throws that he made throughout the season, especially in key situations where I'm sure he wanted to take those throws back, but he wasn't let loose. And I feel like with Peterson there now, he's somewhat of a quarterback guru is what they call him. I think that he's going to help his development.
The only time Wentz was ever good was when he was there.
Yeah, and other teams thought that they could match what Peterson had with Wentz, and we saw why he's in the position that he's in now. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I do think there's going to be some improvement here. It's really hard for me to see that big of a leap. I feel like at this point you win 5 games of the season. It's an improvement based off what you did last season. So they could still have a bad season, and it's still something to be positive about because they're heading in the right direction. And I do think that Lawrence is a good quarterback, and I really hope that he develops into it. I just, as far as the pros are concerned, I haven't seen it yet. So all that stuff remains to be seen.
Yeah. anything on the Texans. They're hyping up, the rookie running back Pierce. Mills was, I think he's getting a little overhyped now. Everybody's, wow, what a rookie season. And I'm like, well, yes, if you're a third-round pick and you look at it from the eyes of a terrible team and, those last 5 games, he was great. And I'm like, well, yes, that's easy to do when you're 3-15 and none of the games matter and you can pretty much do whatever you want. But I will say he did play solid down the stretch. Do you think they're going to be the worst team in the league, or do you think they can sort of bounce up from that? Honestly, you look at the offensive side of the ball. They got some players, and if the rookie running back turns out to be a good player, I think they could score some points. I don't know about defensively, but, Lovie Smith has always been a coach defensively who can create turnovers. I don't know if the talent's there to sort of do that type of thing, but what are your feelings on the Texans?
Listen, the Texans were last year's joke, and it's very unfortunate because it really, well, I guess it kind of was their fault, but it also wasn't. A lot of it had to do with surrounding with their quarterback controversy. But yes, it's good. It's easy to look good when you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. They were having a losing season. You just kind of go out there, you just sling the ball. And listen, nobody has more experience with trying to feel good about something bad than I do as a Ram fan. I mean, I remember really bad years where, our quarterback or our running back would go for, a few hundred yards in a game. And I'm like, yes, things are looking up. And then I look at a record, we're 2-14. I'm like, okay, things weren't really looking up. So it's hard. I don't want to, they did good things. We talked during the offseason about how they were going to have a hard time. They didn't have a lot of assets. They acquired some assets through the trade. They didn't have a lot of money because of the money they tied up. They're starting to free up a little bit of that money. This is a work in progress. I still think they have a good chance of being the worst team in the league, but I don't think they're that bad. I think they can be okay, but it's a work in progress. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the league. I think they'll be a little spunkier than that. There are a couple other teams that I just look at and are like, whoa. I think this one will be one of those where
Would you be surprised if they were the worst team in the league?
No, but
okay.
I think this team will play harder than some of those teams that I think will be the worst team in the league. I think they'll sort of grind out 4 or 5 wins, and steal a couple when teams come in there not ready to play. They hit a couple offensive plays. Cooks gets deep, has one of those games. I don't think anybody knows, but Cooks is like one of 3 receivers to have 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Yes.
I know he's been passed
around
to every team in the league, but he's a productive receiver. So, it wouldn't shock me that they'd be the worst, but I think they'd be a little better than that. I think they'll play hard, which I don't know about some of these teams. So let's get to the futures here. I don't have a ton other than the Colts. I have a lot on the Colts. Jags, I got 2 of them. AFC South winner plus 750. If something were to happen to Matt Ryan, we don't know what we're getting from the Titans. We don't know quite what we're going to get from the Texans. And if Ryan goes down, I don't know what the Colts do there. So I think 750. Decent value there. And Jags winning record plus 320, I think is pretty decent value as well. Texans, I got nothing. The Colts, I have a lot of money on. Super Bowl, Colts, 22-1 on that one. I like that one. Colts to beat Philly, 270-1. I think that'll be a nice one value-wise. Colts to beat Niners, 150-1. Colts, Niners, Super Bowl. Colts, Eagles, Super Bowl, 95 and 150-1. Colts versus Chiefs, AFC Championship game. I was really surprised by this number, 19-1. I thought that's pretty decent value because, I don't put the Chiefs or the Colts quite up there with Chiefs, Bills, but I think they're probably the leader of that second-tier pack of Cincinnati, Baltimore, Chargers, Raiders, those type of teams. So I like that 19-1 on that one. Indianapolis Colts number 1 seed is 11-1. I think if you look at this division and the Titans fall back, you're now looking at a division where they play two teams of Titans, Jags, Texans. And, the Bills with that schedule, the AFC West and all those teams, I think 11-1, really good value on that one. And then Colts to win the AFC, 12-1. Colts, exact order division. I really like these. Colts, Jags, Texans, Titans, and Colts, Jags, Titans, Texans. You sort of flip, thinking Tennessee, if they fall back, and you put the Jags in there, you get 80-1 and 8-1 on those two ones. And then exact order, Colts, Jags at 7-1, 125. And then my last one, Tennessee Titans. Most points given up, 50-1. They finished 2 years ago, like you said, their defense was really bad. They were second in the league in that one. So I really like that 50-1, especially with the Landry injury. And if things really start to slide downhill for the Titans, I wonder if that sort of ship sinks and we sort of regress back to the defense 2 years ago. What are you looking for out of the AFC South prop-wise?
Well, listen, I've got a couple here, and I think I'm going to double up on these when we turn to the NFC side of things. But listen, I've got this one here, the Colts as the number one seed in the AFC. I know it's a bit of a long shot at plus 1,000, but here, let me give you my logic. They're ranked 32nd in the NFL as far as strength of schedule based off last season. Yep. Okay, so you put a pretty good team with a pretty good defense, a pretty good running attack, and a veteran quarterback in a division that we're not quite sure how things are going to turn out. I think you have a pretty good shot there. Another one I've got here, I've got the Colts versus the Rams to reach the final at plus 6,600. Again, if I'm thinking that the Colts are going to be the number one seed, they have a pretty good shot at making it all the way. And if that's the case, you look at them with the defending football champs, that gives you pretty good odds, especially since the Rams, I think, were ranked like third or fourth overall to get back to the big game. And I know I had another one here. I'm just trying to locate it really quick. Oh, here it is. AFC South and NFC West divisions meeting up in the final at plus 1,800. So it's still pretty decent value there. And again, if you're using the logic that I used about strength of schedule, going up against defending champs, all three of those bets seem like pretty good, even though they're long shots.
Yeah. All right. So we moved from the South into the Wild West of the AFC. And if every team tried to improve themselves in one division, this was the division. So the Chargers bring in a bunch of defensive guys. The Broncos bring in a quarterback. Las Vegas brings in offensive weapons and defensive weapons. And the Chiefs sort of remold how they're going to sort of be productive. I did find it interesting, even with the add-ons of all these divisions, we both still think Kansas City's probably the top dog here. We differ on Vegas. I have them second, you have them last. Now, I think basically Vegas, Chargers, Denver, it's a dice roll. You're just guessing how these three teams, because you look at the Chargers, talent-wise, they're probably on equal level of the Chiefs, but I don't know if anyone has noticed, but they haven't made the playoffs with all this talent. Now, granted, the defensive side has improved, but a lot of those guys are still there, and, Khalil Mack, as much as I love him, has not exactly been a dominant presence off the edge the last couple years. So it's hard for me to be real aggressive on saying the Chargers are going to do things when I haven't even seen them prove it. And then they had a head-to-head game last year versus Las Vegas to get into the playoffs. And guess what? Las Vegas.
A game that they were favored also.
Yes. Las Vegas went in there. The Broncos are interesting because I think that's a matter of what you think's left in Russell Wilson. I've watched Russ the last 2 years. I've seen a bit of a drop-off. You seem to be a little bit higher on him, through our conversations and other things. So I have them last, but, you could also tell me Russ is healthy and Denver's ready to go and fly. So how did you sort of sort this, and why did you come out with KC on top and then sort of put Denver, Chargers, Vegas how you did?
Okay, I'll tell you the main reason why I have Kansas City as the number one team in that division: consistency.
Yeah.
They've been consistently the best team in that division, regardless of what players I have on the outside, regardless of what players are under center. You're talking about the days with Alex Smith. This team was competing regardless. They were always good, and a lot of it has to do with not just the front office but also the coaching staff. They do a really good job at keeping some consistency there, which is obviously really good for a team around all that thing. So that's the reason why I have them first. I think they're a really talented team in a really tough division, but they've been very consistent, which is why I think they're the top dogs in that division. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if you were to flip it around and tell me that, these three other teams are going to win that division. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked.
You can make a case for everyone.
Oh, yes, definitely.
These four teams are loaded. And honestly, you could maybe convince me that all four get into the playoffs. I know that's very difficult. We looked at it last year with the NFC West.
Close. It was close.
And there's always one that sort of falls by the wayside. But you could easily look at this and say these four teams in the Bills probably are the four most talented teams in the AFC. So it really is a dice roll there. Your point on the Chiefs, Andy Reid just wins football games. And I know the loss of Tyreek Hill, but you bring in Schuster, you bring in Scantling, you draft Sky Moore, you still have Hardman there, you have a really good offensive line. Yes, you're going to miss Hill's explosiveness, but I think you cover that with now you have three or four really solid receivers, and if you need to go over the middle and play a possession game, you can. You got Hardman, you got Moore to stretch the field. You can sort of cover for Tyreek Hill as much as you like him. And Kelsey's still there. So, and I thought they brought in a couple decent pieces on the defensive side of the ball, too. I thought it was smart not to sort of re-sign Mathau for big money, sort of save money there, save money on Hill, build with some younger guys. But I'm curious your thoughts on the Chargers here. We talked about it. Talent-wise, they are loaded. I mentioned the thing where they've been loaded and they still haven't made the playoffs. And I have coaching questions. We watched that guy last year, and he was being insane. I know we all love math, and we all love going for it on fourth downs, but...
Not me.
But I don't think you can go for it on fourth down on your own 30 when you're playing another professional team. If you're in college football and you're Ohio State and you're playing the likes of Western Michigan, sure, go for it on your 30. Your defense will probably hold. But if the other team has professional level players and you're handing them the ball on the 30, they're probably going to score points and punish you. So do you think that's just sort of a first year thing with Staley and getting his bearings, or is this going to continue to be a problem sort of all year long where the Chargers put themselves in difficult situations and have to do crazy things like in Las Vegas and launch 70 passes because they put themselves in the hole and get behind by 20 points and then ask Justin Herbert to make ridiculous throws the whole fourth quarter?
Okay, a lot of my assessment as far as to where I put the Chargers have to do with how much talent they have sprinkled throughout, both offense and defense. Yes, I know that the other teams in this division are also, loaded with talent, but you look at the Chargers, there was definitely a progression offensively last year with Herbert, and Eckler, and they seem to just, make plays happen. And I know they fell short when they went up against the Raiders in that playoff game at the end to get into the playoffs. But I think that year two, you bring in, talent in the areas that you needed the most, which was basically on defense. Now, I know you're not a big, Khalil Mack defender. You feel like he hasn't really lived up to the name to the aura that his name brings. But
well, 3 years ago, I was all for it. I've just watched him play the last 2 years, and he's not been the same force. So
this is the thing, though. Okay, when I was looking at him, I was. It reminds me, and I know I'm not comparing them, okay? So don't mix this up, but it reminds me of like Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
Okay, because you have a guy that's really, really talented, is going to acquire a lot of attention from the opposing offensive line, And what that does is it frees up other guys. You look at Robert Quinn, a guy who had a lot of success when he was with the St. Louis Rams. I believe he led the league in sacks one year. Now he's with Chicago. He was their leading sack, I believe, player last year, if I'm not mistaken. It seems like having Khalil Mack there eases things for the rest of the players on that defensive line and that defensive front. And I feel like that's what's going to happen. You don't have to be the main guy in LA with the Chargers. They've got their main guy already. All you got to do is go in there and impact the game. And I think that's going to help him, and it's going to help the Chargers also. So just based off talent, again, you could flip any of these teams and their position, and I wouldn't be shocked with that. But just based off the talent, based off last year's results, just the way I think things are going to pan out, that's where I've got the Chargers.
Yeah, you could talk me into Mac having sort of a rebirth. It was a very bad situation in Chicago. He'd been hurt. You move him to the Chargers. You got Bosa on that side. It frees him up a little bit too, where you can't double either side. So I agree that there could be some sort of Mac resurrection. It's sort of my same look with Denver, as the last 2 years it's not been the same player. With Russell Wilson, I've watched, it has not been the same player. Khalil hasn't been the same player. So I want to get your thoughts on Denver here, because I think you still trust Russ and think sort of the change of scenery here will sort of revive him, and we'll get that Russ from a couple years ago.
Listen, and I might be a little biased, okay, because I've seen this guy compete against my team for what feels like an eternity now. But I love Russell Wilson. And I don't know if you're allowed to say you love a guy from the opposing team, from one of your rivals, but you know how I am. I try to be non-biased when it calls for it. I'm going to love Geno Smith. I'm going to love Geno Smith. You best believe that. But listen, I try my best to be non-biased when the situation calls for it, okay? And I've always been one to admit Russell Wilson is magic. I know that over the last couple of seasons there's been some struggles, but if you look back at their championship years, it wasn't about that offense. It never was about the offense. It was always about the defense. The big thing was that Russell Wilson would make magical things happen, magical plays happen when the moment didn't feel like it. And now I go back to that Super Bowl with the Patriots, and he didn't make magic happen there, but that wasn't so much his fault. I don't know why you don't give the ball to Marshawn Lynch in that situation, but that's neither here nor there. I have a lot of respect for Russell Wilson as a competitor. I feel that he can make a lot of those key situational moments happen. And I feel like we've talked about it for the last couple of seasons. Denver was a pretty solid team that was a quarterback away from being competitive. Now, I know a lot of those pieces that we really liked on that team have moved on, but the core is still there. And I think that with the additions that they've had this offseason, I think they can be pretty good as long as Russell Wilson can play up to the standard that Russell Wilson is used to bringing.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question. I'm going to give a little love to Las Vegas, because they were the team that ended up squirting out of that division last year. Not the Chargers, not the Broncos. They upgrade with Adams. You now got Adams and Renfro. I know there's been some things with Waller, but I sort of ignore that. That's training camp. Yes, he's not playing, but okay. I think Waller knows the playbook. Whatever. I'm interested how Josh McDaniel sort of does with this team. It's certainly an upgrade from the special teams coach that they had taking over last year. The only worry I have a little bit about Las Vegas is the defensive line is still really, really good. Linebackers, secondary, that's still a little scary, and the Raiders' offensive line is still a little scary. And, if they can maintain enough blocking, I think they can score points. And I just like this Raiders team, and I think they're going to be in the mix here. I don't chalk them off, because I was really, really impressed with what they did last year. So I'm keeping my eye on this Raiders team. Let's move to some futures. This is probably the only division where I had a little bit sprinkled on kind of everybody. We'll start with Kansas City. I got a bunch on Kansas City here. Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl 10-1. I thought that was pretty good value, considering they've been about 5 or 6 to 1 the last handful of years. So you're getting a couple extra points there. Kansas City Chiefs AFC 5 to 1. Kansas City to beat San Francisco 75 to 1. This one I really like. Kansas City to beat Philadelphia 130 to 1 in the Super Bowl. I think that's really, really good value. That's a big, big number for, Kansas City, who I think is one of the 3 favorites out of the AFC. And we're about to get into part 2 here. We'll go over my Philadelphia love that might destroy all future bets coming through. But really like that one. Chiefs Niners Super Bowl 45 to 1. Chiefs Eagles just to get to the Super Bowl 80 to 1. I thought that was really good value as well. Exact order: Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos. That's 22 to 1. You know what the division finished last year? Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos. So 22 to 1 seems like good value on that one. And then I really like the Chiefs over 10.5 wins. I think the Chiefs can get to 12 to 13 wins here, even in this stacked division. Even money on that, so I like that one. Broncos, I'm flipping the other way. I'm going Russ isn't back. Someone's got to lose games in this division, so I'm going Broncos. Under 9.5 wins at plus 115. And then I got an alternate win total line. Broncos under 7.5 wins, plus 320. So I like that one at plus 320 under 7.5 because I think somebody's going to have to lose games and somebody's going to have to fall by the wayside. And then we move to the Raiders. AFC West winner 7 to 1. So if they can sneak up there and win division 7 to 1, I think that's pretty good value because I think all these teams are in and around the same talent level. And then I'm just going to do it because everybody is packing on love with the Chargers, but Chargers under 10 wins plus 120. I'll just eat it if they win 10 games, but they haven't won 10 games in, I don't know, 8 years. So I'm not all that worried about that one. All right, what do you got on the AFC West side of things?
I'm going to take, in such a stacked division, as we mentioned, we wouldn't be surprised with any of these teams flip-flopping position. I'm going to take the Raiders to get a wild card spot at plus 310. Again, we mentioned if there's any division that's got a potential to get 4 teams in, it's probably this division, just like the NFC did last year. So I think that putting the Raiders, a team that I'm not 100% sold on, but I still think they can be really good. I think getting them to a wild card spot at plus 310 is pretty good value.
All right, that wraps up part 1 for the AFC. Be sure to catch part 2 for the NFC. And that's our show, and we're out.